There's a strange kind of power in a man who never tries to be powerful. In worlds built on ego, ambition, and dominance, the loudest people usually rise to the top. The men who want the throne tend to chase it. They maneuver, betray, manipulate, anything to get closer to the seat of authority. But every once in a while, a different kind of figure appears. A man who could lead, but doesn't want to. A man who understands power so well that he refuses to chase it. Silvio Dante is one of those men. In The Sopranos, surrounded by volatile personalities, impulsive leaders, and fragile egos, Silvio becomes something rare. Not the king, not the challenger, but the stabilizer. The man who holds everything together while never asking to be the one in charge. And in a world built on ambition, that might be the most unusual role of all, because Silvio Dante represents a quiet contradiction. A man fully capable of leadership who chooses loyalty instead. To understand Silvio Dante, you have to understand the environment he exists in. The world of organized crime is built almost entirely on ambition. Everyone wants something: money, power, status, respect. Men spend their entire lives fighting to climb a ladder that is constantly collapsing beneath them. In this world, loyalty is often temporary, and ambition is permanent, which makes Silvio Dante unusual from the very beginning. Silvio isn't the boss, he isn't the loudest personality, and he isn't the one constantly maneuvering for position. Instead, he serves as Tony Soprano's consigliere, the advisor, the strategist, the calm voice sitting just behind the throne. Silvio understands the rules of the game better than almost anyone. He knows when violence is necessary, he understands the politics of the organization, he can enforce decisions when needed. And most importantly, he understands Tony. Silvio doesn't just work for Tony Soprano. He balances him. Where Tony is impulsive, Silvio is measured. Where Tony reacts emotionally, Silvio thinks strategically. Where Tony feels the pressure of leadership, Silvio absorbs the consequences. But here's the strange thing about Silvio Dante. He clearly has the intelligence, the experience, and the authority to be a leader, and yet he never truly tries to become one, which raises a deeper question. Why? The world of The Sopranos is full of men who want more than they have. Christopher Moltisanti wants status and recognition. Ralph Cifaretto wants dominance. Richie April wants control. Even Tony himself constantly struggles with the pressure of holding power. Almost every character in the show is driven by the same fundamental force: ambition. The belief that life would be better if they were just one level higher. But Silvio Dante operates differently. He understands something that many of the others don't. Power comes with weight. The higher you climb in a hierarchy built on violence and loyalty, the more unstable your position becomes. Every decision you make creates enemies. Every act of leadership isolates you. Every move forward makes you a target. Silvio sees all of this, and instead of chasing power, he positions himself beside it, not beneath it, beside it. There's a subtle difference there. Silvio isn't powerless. In many situations, he holds enormous influence. He helps guide decisions, he enforces discipline, he acts as Tony's representative when necessary, but he never tries to replace Tony. And that choice reveals something important about human nature. Some people want power, others want stability. Silvio Dante chooses stability. One of the most interesting roles in any hierarchy is the second in command. History is full of these figures: advisors, strategists, right-hand men, people who understand the system, but never sit at the top of it. Because sometimes the most powerful position in a system isn't leadership, it's proximity to leadership. Silvio sits close enough to power to influence it, but far enough away to survive it. He sees the consequences of Tony's decisions without being the one responsible for them. He can advise without carrying the full burden. He can act without being the primary target. And over time, he becomes something incredibly valuable. The stabilizer. Every chaotic system needs one. A person who keeps things from collapsing. Someone who maintains order when emotions take over. Someone who reminds the leader what reality actually looks like. Silvio Dante is that person. But the show gives us a moment where Silvio briefly steps into the role of boss, and the result is revealing. When Tony is temporarily incapacitated, Silvio assumes leadership. At first glance, it seems like a natural transition. Silvio is respected, he's intelligent, he understands the organization, but almost immediately, something changes. The pressure begins to build. The weight of leadership becomes visible. Decisions that once seemed theoretical now carry real consequences, and Silvio begins to struggle. Not because he lacks intelligence, not because he lacks capability, but because leadership requires a different psychological tolerance, a tolerance for constant pressure, constant conflict, constant responsibility. Silvio quickly realizes something that many ambitious people never understand until it's too late. Being able to lead and wanting to lead are two very different things. And the moment Tony returns, Silvio is relieved, not defeated, relieved, because his natural role was never the throne, it was the balance. What makes Silvio Dante so interesting isn't just his loyalty to Tony, it's how deeply that loyalty defines him. In many ways, Silvio represents a kind of old world code. The idea that loyalty is not just a strategy, but an identity. In modern systems, loyalty is often transactional. People remain loyal as long as it benefits them. When opportunities appear elsewhere, they move. But Silvio operates under a different philosophy. His loyalty to Tony isn't based purely on advantage, it's rooted in history, friendship, shared experiences, a sense of order. Silvio believes the system works best when everyone understands their role. Tony leads, Silvio advises, others follow. And when that structure remains stable, chaos stays contained. Which leads to another interesting contradiction. Silvio is part of an inherently chaotic world. Organized crime is unpredictable, violent, and unstable. Yet Silvio himself becomes a symbol of consistency. He dresses the same, speaks the same, carries himself the same, even his personality rarely shifts. While everyone around him fluctuates emotionally, Silvio remains steady. Not because he lacks emotion, but because stability is his role. To outsiders, Silvio Dante might appear secondary. The quiet man standing behind Tony. The background present in many conversations, but perception can be misleading because in many ways, Silvio is one of the most important structural pieces in the entire organization. Tony Soprano is the face, Silvio Dante is the foundation. He translates Tony's instincts into strategy. He smooths over conflicts. He keeps the machine functioning when emotions threaten to derail it. Without Silvio, Tony's impulsiveness would create constant instability. Silvio is the buffer, the interpreter, the emotional regulator of the organization, which is why his presence matters even when he's not speaking. Sometimes leadership isn't about giving orders. Sometimes it's about preventing collapse. There's a quiet intelligence in people who understand their limits, not weakness, awareness. Silvio Dante understands exactly who he is. He understands the environment he lives in, and he understands the cost of ambition. Many characters in The Sopranos chase power until it destroys them. Christopher's ambition leads to addiction and insecurity. Ralph's arrogance leads to conflict. Richie's hunger for control leads to rebellion. Each of them believes they deserve more. Silvio doesn't operate from that belief. He already knows his place. And that knowledge gives him something many other characters lack. Peace, not happiness, not innocence, but peace with his role. And sometimes that kind of self-awareness is more powerful than ambition. When people talk about legacy, they usually talk about leaders. The bosses, the kings, the people whose names sit at the top of the hierarchy. But every system is also built on individuals who maintain it. The people who keep things functioning. The ones who prevent chaos from swallowing everything. Silvio Dante represents that kind of legacy. He isn't the most feared man. He isn't the most powerful, but he might be the most necessary. Without Silvio, Tony Soprano's world becomes far more unstable. And sometimes, the most important figures in history aren't the ones who sit on the throne. They're the ones who keep the throne from collapsing. Silvio Dante never becomes the boss. He never fights for the throne. He never tries to reshape the hierarchy. Instead, he does something much quieter. He keeps the system balanced. In a violent world driven by ego and ambition, Silvio becomes a stabilizing force, a man who understands power but chooses loyalty, a man capable of leadership who prefers not to lead. And maybe that's why he lasts as long as he does, because sometimes survival in chaotic systems isn't about rising. Sometimes to the top. Sometimes it's about standing exactly where you belong and never needing to move.